Hi, my name's Kade Fritz, and today we're going to be talking about transamination and oxidative deamination. Amino acids have a lot to do with transamination and oxidative deamination. Now, what are amino acids? Well, there are 20 total amino acids. There are the 10 essential and then the 10 non-essential. The 10 essential need to be put into the body through diet. We need these. Non-essential are just in the body produces them. Each amino acid has a certain structure. Each structure has an amine group, a side chain R group, and then once the amine group breaks off through transamination, which I will explain in a second, we have what's left of is the carbon skeleton, which is then what our body usually absorbs. Transamination. Well, transamination is a process that happens in a healthy person. Basic definition is it's the recycling of nitrogen groups. And by nitrogen groups, amine groups. That's what I mean by nitrogen groups. The general reaction would be here's an amino acid, here's a keto acid, and I'm not going to say which ones they are. Here's the amine group, the nitrogen group. The amino acid gives its amine group to the keto acid, and then the keto acid accepts it. The keto acid then breaks off its oxygen and gives it to the amino acid, and then the amino acid yields amino acid 2, which could be a lot of amino acids, and then a keto acid 1 is what the amine group helps yield with the keto acid. So, with that said, let's get to the real deal. So, in this example, I have muscle, blood, and the liver. I'm going to use the amino acid alanine and the keto acid AKG. Here are the structures. Here's the nitrogen group. Here's the oxygen. Now, for this to work, we need to have a certain enzyme. A certain enzyme is alanine amino transaminase in this case. And then we need to have PLP, or paradoxal phosphate, in this enzyme. The amino acid will sit in this little slot, and the keto acid will sit in this slot. The amino acid gives its NH3 to the keto acid. The keto acid gives its O2 to the amino acid, as you can see here. Then what this does is it yields the amino acid 2 pyruvate, and then the glutamate is the keto acid 1. Now this reaction happens to be reversible. Pyruvate glutamate can produce alanine and AKG. Alanine and AKG can produce pyruvate and glutamate. Now what happens with pyruvate after it's a product of transamination? Well, pyruvate turns into lactic acid, which I'll get to in a second, what happens to lactic acid, but it can also produce acetyl-CoA. The acetyl-CoA then goes to what's called the Krebs cycle. Then from the Krebs cycle, it goes to the electron transport chain, which then turns into ATP. Going back to lactic acid, the lactic acid goes through something we call gluconeogenesis. Then the lactic acid, once it's in the liver, it LDH and NAD plus goes to NADH, so then eventually the lactic acid gets converted into pyruvate. Then the pyruvate has to get turned into glucose eventually. The pyruvate goes to G6P, and then the G6P through G6 phosphatase enzyme, which must be present for the G6P to turn into glucose. That must be present, the G6 phosphate enzyme. And then, so you might be wondering, I haven't talked about glutamate yet. What happens to glutamate? Well, the glutamate goes all the way through the bloodstream to the liver from the muscle, and it goes through glutamate dehydrogenase, which NADP plus goes to NADPH, which is a reactive species. And once you add H2O to the glutamate dehydrogenase, it yields alpha-ketoglutamase. From alpha-ketoglutamase to NH3, which is toxic, you can add a proton. What happens when you add a proton to NH3? Well, +1 NH4, which is ammonium. Now, ammonium, if it gets to the brain, is not good. It causes like anxiety and just not thinking clearly because it doesn't let the brain produce GABA. NH4 undergoes the urea cycle, which then is done in the mitochondria. This whole process right here, from the glutamate going all the way through the liver and going through all this, that is called oxidative deamination.